What did it look like?
Like a wing. It was the wing off a bloody aircraft.
Really tear at the fabric of reality that a whole jet line has just disappeared.
After a decade of uncertainty and relentless searching, a new phase of hope emerges in the quest to uncover the fate of Flight MH370. You see, the mystery of Flight MH370 might finally be cracked. Years have passed, but the pain and curiosity never faded. Now, shockingly, a new clue has emerged. Hearts race as we edge closer to the truth of this unforgettable saga. Join us as we dive into the latest breakthrough, unraveling the story that has gripped the world. Vanished in the night, the missing MH370. Our story kicks off in the early hours of a chilly March morning in the year 2014. To be more specific, it all started at 12:41 in the morning on the 8th of March. There was a big airplane, Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, getting ready to take off. It was all set to fly from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, heading all the way to Beijing, Capital International Airport in China. This wasn't supposed to be a long trip, just over 6 hours from start to finish. The big airplane they were using for this journey was a Boeing 777-200ER, which wasn't exactly brand new. It had been flying around for 12 whole years and had the registration number 9MMRO. The person flying the plane was Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, a very experienced and skilled 53-year-old pilot. Captain Zahari had been flying planes for a long time, clocking in 18,365 hours in the air. He knew this route well and really loved flying. He often shared stories about his flights and talked about how much he loved planes on social media. With him in the cockpit was First Officer Fark Abdul Hamid, a younger guy at 27, who had 2,763 hours of flying experience. This particular flight was a training one for him, a chance to learn more, but unfortunately, it turned out to be his very last. There were also 10 friendly flight attendants on board, ready and eager to make sure the 227 passengers, including 5 little kids, were safe and comfortable. While most of the passengers were from China, the airplane was like a small international community flying high above the clouds. It carried 38 people from Malaysia, along with folks from Indonesia, Australia, India, France, the USA, Iran, Ukraine, Canada, New Zealand, the Netherlands, Russia, and Taiwan. As the big plane rolled down runway 32R and took to the skies, it vanished into the dark night, heading northeast over the vast South China Sea. Once it hit the cruising altitude of 35,000 feet, the crew checked in with Kuala Lumpur Air Traffic Control, just to say everything was going smoothly. Not too long after, as the airplane was about to cruise into Vietnamese airspace, the folks controlling the air traffic in Malaysia sent over a standard farewell message. It's like saying good night when you switch off the lights. Captain Zahari responded with, "Good night, Malaysian 370, which is the usual way pilots say see ya when they move from one air traffic control region to another. But here's where things take a turn into the unknown. Just as the airplane moved into Vietnamese skies, it vanished off the radar. Its transponder, which is like an airplane's ID card sending out all its vital info to those watching from below, suddenly stopped working. This glitch made the plane a ghost in the sky. Those tracking it on the ground lost all sight and understanding of where it was or what was happening on board. It was as if, in the blink of an eye, the plane stepped into a shadow, leaving everyone puzzled and worried. The story gets even weirder and more mysterious. Before the airplane disappeared, nobody on the plane sent out any kind of emergency signal. There weren't any reports about the weather being bad or something going wrong with the plane. Then, around 1:30 in the morning, something unexpected happened. Both the military and regular people watching the radar in Malaysia saw the plane again, but something was off. The plane wasn't where it was supposed to be. It did something really surprising. It turned around and started going back the way it came. Then, it flew southwest across the Malay Peninsula, which is a big area with lots of trees and land. But it didn't stop there. The plane changed its direction once more and flew northwest across a big body of water called the Strait of Malacca. Nobody has any idea why the plane did these strange things. Was there a problem with the plane? Did someone decide to change the course on purpose? Or was there another reason? Around this confusing time, the pilot of another airplane tried to reach out to Flight 370. They used a special emergency channel to try to deliver a message from the people controlling the airspace in Vietnam. They were asking the Flight 370 team to get back to them. The pilot from the other plane did manage to make a sort of connection, but the talk they had wasn't clear at all. Instead of words, all they heard were some muffled noises and a lot of static. This made everything even more baffling and scary. Then, in the early hours, when it's usually peaceful, something startling occurred. At 2:22 a.m., the people in the Malaysian military who keep an eye on the skies lost track of the airplane. This happened over a mysterious and deep place called the Andaman Sea. The radar suddenly going silent was a scary clue that something bad might have happened. Things turned even scarier at 2:40 a.m. The air traffic controllers, who are responsible for keeping an eye on airplanes, had shocking news. They contacted Malaysia Airlines and told them something nobody wanted to hear. Flight 370 had vanished from their radar. They couldn't see it anymore. Hearing this, Malaysia Airlines got really worried. They began a frantic search to find the airplane. They reached out to everyone they could think of who might help. Other air traffic controllers, airplanes in the sky, anyone who might know something. They were desperate for any clue about where Flight 370 could be. By the time the sun began to rise at 5:30 a.m., the search had become even more intense. The people looking for the plane were really putting all their effort into it, concentrating on two main places, the South China Sea and the Gulf of Thailand. These were the last spots where the plane had made contact. There was a huge push to find out where the plane went. After the plane went off the radar, it became a huge topic all over the news. Many people came forward saying they might have seen the plane. On March 19, 2014, different kinds of eyewitnesses, fishermen, workers on oil rigs, and residents of places like the Kuta Huadu Atoll and the Maldives all reported seeing something. They claimed to have seen an airplane that looked like Flight 370. Some of these eyewitness accounts were really detailed. For instance, a fisherman near the coast of Kota Baru reported seeing an airplane flying unusually low, which was both strange and alarming. Keep going with us as the mystery grows, with strange sightings and ideas that spread the puzzle beyond the plane's disappearance. Searching the silent Vietnamese waters. Far off in the distance, a whole 1863 miles southeast of a place called Wong, something unsettling happened. An oil rig worker, just doing his usual job, looked up to see something that made his heart skip a beat. He reported seeing flames in the sky early in the morning, something no one expects or wants to see. The Vietnamese authorities, hearing his story, felt it was serious enough to act upon. They launched a search and rescue mission, hoping to find out what this frightening sight in the sky could have been. Meanwhile, Indonesian fishermen added to the growing mystery with their own alarming tale. They claimed to have witnessed an airplane plummeting down near the Malacca Straits. This added another layer of confusion and fear to the already baffling case of Flight 370. And just when people thought it couldn't get any stranger, 3 months after the initial disappearance, a British woman sailing across the vast Indian Ocean came forward. She reported seeing a plane engulfed in flames, adding her voice to the eerie chorus of mysterious sightings. All these varying accounts made the vanishing of Flight 370 even more perplexing. While each story was different, they all painted a picture of a bizarre and tragic event. Questions kept piling up, with very few answers in sight. What really happened to the plane and all those aboard? The search pressed on, fueled by hope and a relentless desire to uncover the truth behind one of the most puzzling incidents in aviation history. Initially, the search efforts were concentrated on the South China Sea. This was the logical place to start, since that's where the plane was supposed to be flying. But then, out of nowhere, everyone was thrown for a loop. New information emerged showing that Flight 370 had strayed far from its intended path and was actually heading west. This revelation shifted the whole course of the investigation. The search areas were expanded to include new regions, such as the Strait of Malacca and the mysterious depths of the Andaman Sea. But this was just the beginning of a mystery that continued to deepen and become more intricate. Later on, some vital clues emerged from signals that the missing plane had sent to a satellite. These signals weren't straightforward. They were more like cryptic whispers from the sky, hinting that the plane was still airborne hours after it had disappeared from radar screens. This information shocked everyone. The plane had been flying unseen and undetected for about 6 hours, and its whereabouts during that time were completely unknown. March 15th marked a pivotal moment in this bewildering saga. Exactly 1 week after the aircraft vanished, a company known as Inmarsat came forward with some critical data. While they couldn't pinpoint the plane's exact location, they provided some vital clues. They suggested that Flight 370 might have ended up in one of two vastly different regions. It could have headed south, possibly crashing into the remote waters of the Indian Ocean southwest of Australia, or it might have flown north, reaching an area stretching from Vietnam all the way to Turkmenistan. Realizing that the airplane wasn't in any of the places they had initially scoured, the search coordinators made a dramatic shift in their approach. They halted their operations into the previously focused areas, like the South China Sea and the Gulf of Thailand, and turned their attention to these new potential paths that the airplane might have taken. But there was a snag, especially with the northern route. The idea that the plane could have flown north, passing unnoticed over countries such as Thailand and Kazakhstan, seemed far-fetched. If the plane had traveled this way, it would have had to navigate through skies, closely watched by various countries' military radars. The nations in this area were pretty confident that their radar systems would have detected any unfamiliar aircraft entering their airspace. Thus, the possibility of Flight 370 taking this northern route was quickly ruled out, leaving investigators and the world puzzled yet again. Now that the northern route was no longer considered, the area they needed to search got a lot bigger. They split this huge area into two main parts. The first part was the southern arc, reaching out into the far, lonely waters of the Indian Ocean, way southwest of Australia. The second part covered a vast area that included parts of Southeast Asia, bits of Western China, and the Indian subcontinent. Making the search area bigger made the already confusing situation even harder to deal with. On a very sad day, March 24, 2014, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Najib Razak, had to share some very sad news with everyone. He said that after looking very carefully at the last signals from the lost plane, with help from the Inmarsat experts and the UK Air Accidents Investigation Branch, they came to a very sad conclusion. They figured out that the last known spot of the plane was over the southern Indian Ocean. This area is so big and empty that there was nowhere the plane could have landed safely. This led to the heartbreaking belief that the plane, with all the people inside, ended up crashing into the sea. This event was a very sad moment in the story of flying, especially for all the people connected to Flight 370. The plane was carrying 239 people, and it seemed almost impossible that anyone survived this terrible event. At that time, this was the worst thing to ever happen to a Boeing 777. This sad title belonged to Flight 370 for 131 days until, in another sad event, another Malaysia Airlines Boeing 777-200ER, Flight 17, was shot down on July 17, 2014. This other awful event took 298 lives, making it even more tragic than the first. Follow us into the intense hunt for clues, filled with unexpected turns and the strong desire to find out what really happened. The faint beep hunt. The mission to find the lost Flight 370 turned into the most costly search in the history of flying. This mission was incredibly hard, mostly because they thought the plane might have crashed in a part of the ocean that's really far from anywhere else, making it very hard to get to. A tiny bit of hope showed up on April 6, 2014, when a ship from Australia, floating far out in the sea, heard what they thought were beeps from the plane's black box. These sounds were caught around 1240 miles northwest of Perth, which is a city on the coast of Western Australia. What made this clue seem real was that the data from Inmarsat, a satellite company, matched where these noises were coming from. But there was a big worry hanging over everyone's heads. If these beeps really were from Flight 370, the black box that recorded the plane's last moments might soon run out of battery and stop working. To check out this clue, they sent down a robotic submarine to comb through the ocean floor. This job was huge. The beeps had been heard over a big, wide area, and despite the submarine looking really hard, and for a long time, it couldn't find any parts of the missing plane. Later on, some people started to think that maybe those beeps were a mistake, perhaps noises made by the submarine's own equipment messing up. But the people looking for the plane didn't give up. They kept searching with determination until June 2015, but sadly, they didn't find any bits of the plane. Then, on July 29, 2015, something small but important happened. Part of the plane's right wing, a piece called the flaperon, washed up on a beach on Reunion Island. This island is really far from where they had been looking, about 2,300 miles west of the search area in the Indian Ocean. Over the next 18 months, pieces of what might be the plane started showing up on beaches in different places like Tanzania, Mozambique, South Africa, Madagascar, and Mauritius. Out of these, 26 bits and pieces were thought to possibly come from the lost plane. 3 of these were definitely from Flight 370, and 17 were almost certainly parts of it. 2 bits even came from inside the plane, which made people think that the plane must have broken into pieces at some point. But what nobody knew for sure was whether the plane broke up while it was still in the sky or when it hit the water. Looking closer at parts of the wing that were found, one on Reunion Island and another in Tanzania, gave some clues about what happened right before the plane was lost. It seemed like the plane hadn't been gently brought down to land on the water by someone controlling it. Instead, some experts started to think that Flight 370 might have hit the water really hard, going straight down in a steep dive. In January 2017, the countries of Malaysia, Australia, and China said that they had to stop their official search for Flight 370. But then, a company from the United States called Ocean Infinity got permission from Malaysia to keep looking. This new part of the search went on until May 2018, when the Malaysian Transport Ministry said that this extra effort to find the plane had also come to an end. Then, in the middle of 2018, specifically in July, Malaysian officials put out a report about the mysterious loss of Flight 370. This report was a big deal because it pretty much said it was unlikely that the plane went missing because something inside it broke by accident. Instead, the report hinted that maybe someone had taken over the plane on purpose, changing its course by hand. This idea made the already puzzling story of Flight 370 even more complicated and deepened the mystery around what really happened. Even with many strong hints and hard work, the group of experts looking into this confusing case still couldn't figure out exactly why Flight 370 disappeared without leaving any hints. After the airplane went missing, lots of people started guessing what might have happened. One scary guess was that maybe someone had taken over the airplane by force, known as hijacking. This wasn't just a wild guess. There were some real facts that made people think it could be true. One really worrying thing they found out was that 2 people got on Flight 370 using passports that weren't theirs. These passports had been stolen from someone else. This fact made everyone very worried. The passports, one belonging to someone from Austria and the other to someone from Italy, had been reported missing in Thailand during the last 2 years. Interpol, which is like a worldwide club that helps police from different countries work together, said yes, these passports were in their big list of passports that people had reported missing or stolen. It was a big problem that no one had checked these passports against the lost and stolen list when the theft was reported. This issue got more attention when Ahmad Zahid Hamidi, the person in charge of keeping Malaysia safe inside, pointed out a big mistake. He was upset because the people working at Malaysia's borders let the 2 passengers with the stolen passports get on the plane. These 2 people had bought tickets that were only for one way and got them through China Southern Airlines. It came out later that a man from Iran, calling from a place in Bangkok, had asked for the cheapest tickets to Europe he could get and paid for them all in cash. Then, they found out more. The 2 passengers were actually young guys from Iran, one 19 years old and the other 29. They had come into Malaysia legally, using their real Iranian passports, right at the end of February. People started guessing that maybe these guys were just trying to go to another country to live safely, known as seeking asylum. The boss of Interpol even said they were starting to think this wasn't about terrorism. After Flight 370 mysteriously went away, American and Malaysian teams started a very detailed check on everyone who was on that flight. They looked into every bit of the passengers' pasts. At the same time, the Chinese government looked really closely at the passengers from China. After all this looking, they all agreed on one thing. There wasn't any sign that any of these people were involved in doing something violent or connected to terrorism. Step into the whirlwind of guesses and stories made after Flight MH370 went missing, each adding twists to the already confusing mystery. Kazakhstan's engineering phone enigma. In this particular story, there was one man who caught everyone's eye for a short while. This man worked as a flight engineer for a company in Switzerland that rented out jets. Because he knew a lot about planes, the people trying to figure out what happened thought he might have taken the plane due to his deep understanding of how to fly and control them. While everyone was trying to guess what might have happened, a very exciting but scary idea came up. Some people thought that maybe spies from Russia took over the plane. They believed these spies made the plane crash on purpose in a very empty part of Kazakhstan. The reason? They thought maybe Russia wanted to make people look somewhere else and not at what they were doing in Crimea, a place where there was a lot of trouble. This idea sounded like something from a spy movie with secret agents and hidden plans, but there was no real proof that it was true. As the story of Flight 370, the missing plane, unfolded, one small piece of information caught everyone's attention and started a lot of talks. There were reports that said the cell phones of the people who were on the plane were still making sounds, like they do when you call them, even though no one knew where the plane was. The families of those missing people were really upset and kept trying to call their loved ones. When they heard the phones ringing, they were filled with questions and started to hope maybe the plane was not lost in the ocean. This tiny glimmer of hope, however, was soon explained by people who know a lot about how cell phones and calls work. They said that just because a phone rings, it doesn't mean the call is actually reaching the other person. What happens is that the phone company's system looks for the phone and tries to make a connection. If it can't make the call go through after trying a few times, it just stops trying. So, the ringing the families heard was probably just the phone company trying to find the phones, not the phones themselves. Even though this explanation made sense from a technical point of view, it didn't help the families feel any better. They were still very sad and confused about what happened to the people they loved who were on that missing plane. Here's what we know. The plane was flying in the night sky above a place called the Gulf of Thailand. Suddenly, without warning, it turned around and flew back over land, passing both big cities and small villages. After this sudden turn, there was no more news from the plane. In a time like ours, where everyone is always talking and sharing things online, this complete silence is really strange and worrying. No one on that plane, whether they were going on holiday or traveling for work, sent a text, made a phone call, shared a picture, or said anything online after the plane changed its direction. This silence has made the mystery even bigger and has made many people very concerned about what might have happened during that flight. Nowadays, with everyone usually being online, it's odd that no one from Flight 370 made any contact. This silence has caused a lot of debate and guessing among experts. Many passengers were from Malaysia and China, countries where almost everyone uses a phone, especially those traveling abroad. So, what stopped them from communicating? Were they unable to send messages? Or were they somehow prevented from doing so? It's possible that the plane was too high in the sky for their phones to work. Or maybe they tried to send messages, but failed. These possibilities make the situation even more puzzling. As investigations continue, the Flight 370 mystery grows deeper and more intriguing. Everyone is looking for any clue that might explain this baffling event. After changing its course, the military radar detected something unusual about Flight 370. It climbed to an extraordinary height of 45,000 feet, far above its normal cruising level, then dropped to around 23,000 feet, and later ascended again to 29,500 feet. This erratic movement could explain why passengers' phones were out of service. Regardless of whether passengers attempted to use their phones mid-flight or had them on from the start, The extreme altitudes likely prevented any connection to ground-based cell towers. In the quest to uncover why Flight 370 veered off its planned path, U.S. investigators considered the possibility of deliberate action from within the cockpit, suggesting the plane might have been intentionally flown towards the Indian Ocean. To dig deeper, the Malaysian authorities examined the homes of the pilots and scrutinized the financial records, including bank and credit card activity, of all 12 crew members, along with other personal details. Dive into the backgrounds and possible reasons of those on board, looking into the crew's lives and the strange events of the flight's last hours. The captain's secret route. A month after the plane vanished, Malaysia's top police officer mentioned they had interviewed over 170 people, including pilots and crew members' families. The captain, Zahari Ahmed Shah, was the prime focus, particularly if the plane's loss was due to human actions. There were unsettling rumors about Captain Zahari. Some speculated he might have planned a tragic ending by deliberately crashing the plane, possibly after locking the co-pilot out, severing all outside communications, compromising the cabin's air quality, and allowing the plane to continue flying on autopilot until it ran out of fuel. Investigations into Zahari's personal life revealed he was a married father of 3 living in a peaceful neighborhood with 2 properties. He owned a flight simulator, which he frequently used at home. A suspicious detail emerged. The simulator contained a flight route mirroring Flight 370's, heading towards the Southern Ocean, ending at a remote island. This deleted route was recovered by specialists who noted its resemblance to Flight 370's actual trajectory, fueling speculation about Zahari's possible motives linked to personal distress. Zahari was experiencing personal difficulties, including a separation from his wife, which is hard for anyone. He was also distressed about a relative, Anwar Ibrahim, receiving a 5-year jail term shortly before Zahari's flight, possibly adding to his emotional strain. However, Zahari's wife refuted these issues, supported by friends and family who believed he was too dedicated to his family and career to harm others. As the inquiry proceeded, Kuala Lumpur police collaborated with the FBI to analyze Zahari's flight simulator thoroughly. Despite the scrutiny, no evidence was found implicating Zahari in planning anything sinister with Flight 370, shifting the investigation towards the co-pilot, Fariq Abdul Hamid. A startling discovery was made. Fariq attempted a phone call while the plane flew low over Malaysia's coastline, but the call abruptly ended. The connection was briefly made with a Penang State Tower, thought to be cut short as the plane moved out of range too quickly for a handoff to another tower. This mysterious phone call's details remained undisclosed, sparking widespread speculation. Who was Fariq trying to reach during such a critical moment? Officials and investigators stayed silent, keeping the call's recipient and intent confidential, leading to rampant speculation and rumors. Amidst this secrecy, some suggested that Fariq, possibly burdened by personal issues, might have made a drastic decision, perhaps commandeering the aircraft, shutting down its systems, and isolating himself in the cockpit. If the rumors were true, it would have marked an incredibly heartbreaking turn of events. Both the crew working on the flight and the passengers would have found themselves in a dire situation, unable to access the cockpit in what would have been a critical moment. This speculation added layers of darkness and sorrow to the already complex and somber narrative of Flight 370, deepening the mystery and enhancing the sense of tragedy surrounding the incident. Speculations arose about Fariq's personal life, particularly concerning potential struggles in his romantic relationships. There was talk that perhaps he was so overwhelmed by personal troubles that he viewed this drastic and horrifying act as an escape from his own suffering. This theory painted a portrait of a man driven to the brink, feeling utterly without alternative options, a narrative that is as heart-wrenching as it is dramatic. Yet, it's crucial to examine elements of his life that contradict this bleak picture. Fariq was not just any pilot. He was a man deeply in love, on the cusp of embarking on a significant new chapter in his life. He was engaged to be married to Captain Nadira Ramley, a 26-year-old pilot from a different airline, and by all accounts, their relationship was a source of great joy and fulfillment for him. This upcoming marriage indicates a man looking forward to the future with optimism, not someone seeking an end. Moreover, Fariq's career was a significant part of his life, one that he took great pride and pleasure in. Flying was not merely a job for him, it was a passion, a calling that he was wholeheartedly devoted to. His enthusiasm for flying was evident, and his commitment to his profession was well known among his peers. This level of dedication highlights how much he valued his role as a pilot. Considering these aspects of his life, it becomes challenging to reconcile the notion that he would deliberately choose a path leading to such a tragic and final act. His imminent wedding and his fervent passion for his career provide strong reasons to live, casting doubt on the likelihood that personal distress could have driven him to commandeer the flight for a catastrophic purpose. The stark contrast between the theories of his despair and the tangible evidence of a man excited about marital life and dedicated to his profession complicates the mystery even further. It urges us to avoid jumping to simplistic conclusions and to consider all facets of his life. Adopting this comprehensive approach to investigation respects the intricacy and nuances of human emotions and behaviors in scenarios such as this. What do you think lies at the heart of the MH370 mystery? Could this new evidence change everything we thought we knew? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.